Hello, I'm Casey Aiken, and this is 21 This Week. Coming up next, surprise, surprise, MCPS wants more of your money for school construction. Should Maryland ban youth tackle football? And Takoma Park considering changing street named after generals. Stay tuned. Our panel of insiders will give you the story behind the story. We're joined by education activist Cynthia Rubenstein, transportation and railway consultant Phil Bell, Maryland Young Republican National Committeeman Evan Young, and political strategist Susan Heltemes. Stay tuned for these stories and more on the next 21 This Week. This past week, the Montgomery County Public School System submitted a proposal for school construction funding, which was nearly $80 million higher than the county executive's recommended plan. Compounding the problem, as noted by Councilmember Craig Rice, was the fact that even if the school system received its fully funded $1.83 billion capital plan, it would be nearly impossible for the county to do it. It still keeps us just even. Susan, somewhere between 51 and 54% of the county's budget goes to the public school system. That's a huge amount of money. Nearly $3 billion goes to the school system annually. So why then are they always clamoring and crying for money every single year?
Well, part of it, Casey, is that the school system is growing a couple thousand students a year. And with that goes along the prerequisite buildings, and they're behind several school buildings in the county. The county is the only one that prepays our school buildings and later get reimbursed by the state. So that's always there. And when you have students who have special needs, whether it's English as a second language, there is a need for more teachers. And face it, Montgomery County has higher standards than a lot of other places. And these numbers are thrown out there as a starting point. The school system knows darn well they're not going to get it. And so they've got to start out high, and you work out any kind of negotiating.
They're lying. They're lying to the
No, they're not lying. It's called
public.
Negotiations. 45
Cynthia
uses it all the time in the White House. You got to make deals.
Okay. Cynthia, I realize it's expensive to educate the little urchins, but can it be done more effectively and less costly? Why don't we cram them into the classrooms like sardines in a can?
Well, for one thing, as Susan said, the school population is growing every year. This year it was actually 2,500 students over last year. And in the state of Maryland, we have something called maintenance of effort, which requires Montgomery County Public Schools to spend the same per student. If you spent a certain amount of money in 2016-17, you have to spend at least that much in subsequent years. So Montgomery County Public Schools is hampered by that requirement by the state.
And that's a state issue.
And it is a state issue.
There's no way of reducing the cost per student?
Not because of the state law called maintenance of effort.
If we had an advanced thinking superintendent, they couldn't reduce the cost regardless because the state mandates we spend the money.
And because we historically were spending at a higher level than other jurisdictions on students. So Montgomery County Public Schools painted themselves into somewhat of a funding corner per student.
So even if we're not getting the results, we still have to spend
But
the
we
money.
are getting the results. It is a little harder than it has been in past eras, because the population of students that is growing is the population of students from low-income families and students who are speakers of other languages.
All right, so Phil, have education policies, as we're hearing, caused this crisis? Can't we reduce or increase class sizes to make it more affordable?
We absolutely can, but I want to bring up one point. We're talking about $1.83 billion in capital spending. It would cost $1.47 billion to buy the entire Cheesecake Factory, which has buildings all across the country, seats, every place else. And I just throw that out there to say, these numbers are absolutely insane. Now, as far as class sizes go, Yeah, class sizes can be bigger. It's always interesting that in high school and middle school, we've got to be in these small classes. But when you make the jump to college, you can be in a massive class and you learn just as well, perhaps even better. Let's start that early, and kids will be better prepared for college, and they'll do better. It'll be cheaper.
So, Evan, are we really seeing dramatic growth in the county, or is this just a demographic bubble that is going to disappear at some time, like the baby boomers disappeared in the late 70s?
Well, even if it doesn't ever disappear and we continue to grow at the same pace, the way it's being addressed right now just doesn't make sense. I was looking at the long-term planning for the county, and they said optimally you want the schools at 80 to 100% capacity. Where I went to high school, Seneca Valley, they are tearing down, they're rebuilding a new one. It'll be the largest high school in the state of Maryland once it's rebuilt, 2,400 student capacity. The enrollment of Seneca Valley has been going down every year and projected even in 2024 to only be at, with 2,400 capacity, 52% capacity. So even if the demographics continue to grow, people continue to move in the county, the money is being spent to build the biggest school in the county where population is not growing as fast. Seems like a misuse of the funds there.
That's a surprise to me because I was just at Argyle Middle School yesterday, and Argyle already knows that it's going to be getting more than 50 sixth graders over their projections, which means for the first time they are going to have portables and they are going to have to hire more teachers. So that area, one of the hard things about Montgomery County Public Schools and making boundaries work for the facilities is that the last thing you want to do is to try to change school attendance boundaries.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
There is
Oh,
nothing
yeah.
hotter.
To deal with capacity issues
Yes,
in
but
facilities.
You've got one school that's 52% capacity and it's going to have more. You have others that are way under. Why can't you change the
You can-
boundaries? Why do we even have to
do
have
you
the
live in
boundaries in the first
Montgomery
place?
County?
Thankfully, I do
Susan.
not live in
Okay,
Montgomery
this
County.
is the question. Because if you lived here, you'd understand the politics of changing school.
This
It
is
has
the
to
same
go with
thing
going from
everywhere.
elementary
Susan, it's the
school
same
to
thing
middle to
everywhere.
high school. And kids want their kids to be in a certain feeder
Clarksburg was
school.
built while I was in Seneca. It moved some kids from Seneca over to Clarksburg. You dealt with it, you moved on. It wasn't life-altering.
But parents
Make
aren't
new
necessary-
friends.
You make new friends, yes.
Well-
Well, most schools, though, that are getting built down county, where Cynthia and I are, they get built and they're over capacity already.
So if we're going to build the biggest school in the state, I just don't see why it's being built, though, in Germantown, where there's 3 high schools.
Germantown, though, is growing.
But the school enrollment isn't.
Another thing we have to look at, and this is looming possibly, and that everybody has to be poised to consider is that what happens if Amazon HQ2 lands in Montgomery County? That is going to absolutely blow up
50,000
the
new employees.
consideration
Some of them
for
will be living
how
here
we
with kids.
contend
One
with the
of-
school
What are
system.
what are the odds in Las Vegas of HQ2 coming to
The
Montgomery
person
There are
County?
some pretty good
the
odds.
person making the choice used to work in Montgomery County. I think it's probably pretty large. But one of the things that could affect parts of Montgomery County is that in 2019, Discovery will be closing. So I think that in parts there will be some kids moving away.
And
at
one
that
more thing
point.
about the demographics. Millennials are a larger generation than even baby boomers. And they are having children and sending them into the
not
school
having
system.
children.
Well,
No, they
the
are. But they
millennials I
are.
know in
But
the
they're
county are
having them
moving to
later
Frederick
than
and
baby
Howard County.
boomers
But
did.
they
But they're
are-
having them.
And they're
Yes.
not having as many children.
Right.
But they're a bigger
And they're
generation.
living downtown in D.C.
No,
and not in
But-
Montgomery
They're getting
But
County.
married
they
and
will
moving to
move.
Frederick to
They
buy a house.
will
You're
be-
you're
Many of them
predicting.
will be moving to the suburbs because they will realize
And
how
Montgomery
smart their
County-
parents were to raise
You
them
mean
in the
living in a
suburbs.
600 square foot apartment doesn't make sense when you have 2 kids? and-
No,
And
they're
Montgomery
going to
County-
they're going to
and
come to
people
that
move to
realization.
Montgomery County because we're known for our good school system.
Well, Susan, you got the last word on it, but we're going to talk to another topic that deals with our youth. And there's a proposal in the General Assembly that would prohibit children from playing tackle football on public fields until they reach high school. It seems that legislatures are always looking out for the well-being of the children. It's all about the kids, you know. Think that this is a way to reduce brain trauma. Cynthia, is this a good idea?
This is an excellent idea. There's enough scientific and health evidence out there to show that the accumulation of early brain injury from children playing sports until about 12 or 13 years old is what is really causing these problems later on in life. And so anything that we can do to prevent these early injuries to the brain is what we should be doing.
Well, so should we bubble wrap the kids, Cynthia? I mean,
It's a
honestly, there's studies that also show that students are getting enough activity and that they're sitting in front of TVs and playing video games too much.
This isn't about keeping kids from being active. This is about keeping them safe while they are active. And that's what this legislation that's being proposed in Maryland is about.
Phil, there are those that think the push to ban tackle football for such an early age is coming too soon, since research related to CTEs before the age of 12 isn't a settled subject. It's unclear. What do you think?
Well, I'm going to start answering that in an interesting way. Evan, are you, now that you're getting later on in life, are you having trouble?
Nope.
You're not? You
Feel better than I did when I was 20.
Better than you did,
Yeah.
and you played football.
I had a couple concussions too.
A couple of concussions. Okay, this is a great example.
Give
What
him
this
till he's
is,
40.
the reality, it's the feminization of America. Football, and I've coached football. It's a great sport. It provides a lot of terrific discipline, and we need to have more of it. This idea that, well, somehow there's a special disease that's going to make it impossible for you to live because you played football is asinine. There's no proof to it. And quite frankly, this is probably one of the dumbest things I've ever
Phil,
heard.
you're just driving Susan crazy. Evan, football isn't the only sport that's under the microscope. Sports such as soccer's a great sport. It's also being reviewed for the brain trauma that it causes.
Yeah,
Why don't we just ban everything?
1.2 million kids 6 to 12 years old play tackle football every year. 1/3 of kids in America are overweight or obese. That's a lot more dangerous to your health than playing tackle football and learning proper technique, proper skills at an early age. Now, my football career ended in college from knee surgeries that I never quite bounced back from. But what I was doing as a 8-10-year-old when I was not playing organized football was playing tackle football still with no coaches, with no protection, on asphalt. Kids are going to play football, they're going to tackle each other, and it's not anyone in Annapolis's decision whether or not my son plays a sport.
And that socialization and everything you got from it, that's healthy. That's exactly what you need to become a well-rounded
I'm
And-
not arguing
Yes, but all you
against
have
the
to do-
socialization and the health benefits of being active. I'm simply arguing about taking one simple measure to prevent brain trauma.
Your brain
in-
develops until
in
you're
children
25. Why
who
don't we ban
are
it until you're
under the
25?
age
It's the
of
base
12.
of the brain that makes a difference.
You gotta
And
understand.
Your brain's not
listen,
developing at
these
15,
youth kids
less than
are
it was
not
at 13.
Not moving fast
No,
enough.
but they any
to
kind of
have
a
these kind of-
concussion. You look at people, whether
It's
it's
not even-
Muhammad Ali, Frank Gifford,
Wait a
different
minute,
sports.
Muhammad Ali
It
was
didn't
a
happen from
boxer.
Pee Wee football.
No, but they had concussions, and you can get concussions after concussions. Fortunately, now they're making a difference, and young
Susan,
girls.
you are off on
No.
a completely. You're on a different third dimension, Susan.
No,
when you're talking
even,
boxing.
No,
and youth
Let's
football.
go to soccer now and women. Hope Solo, who was a goalie on the U.S. Soccer team, had some issues a couple of years ago with beating up her sister and nephew.
What
and
does
all
that have to do with
well,
that
because she
trauma?
beat
well,
up her sister
She's a
and
violent
nephew.
person.
No, they
You're
Evidence of
blaming
brain
that-
trauma.
Right.
Now, Susan, you realize a goalie gets to use their hands.
no, it's because of the heading. And the thing is,
Goalies
is
don't
that
head the ball.
she
Goalies don't
had-
head the ball.
Would you let me finish? She had multiple concussions over the years, and there is
And
a
that
thought
made
she
her
is
become a
getting
violent
help.
All right, well, look, we got to go to break. But Susan, I was an all-Met goalie.
It explains a lot about
soccer.
you right
I
there.
I didn't get any.
Right
I didn't
there.
get any concussions from playing in the goal. When we come back from this short break, Takoma Park, they want to change the name of the street's name, not just after Confederate generals, but they want to change the names named after Yankee generals as well. Has the renaming movement gone out of hand? Stay tuned. And welcome back. Some of the conservative right say that political correctness is a disease. In the city of Takoma Park, which is always on the progressive edge, there's a move afoot to rename streets including Grant, Sheridan, and Sherman Avenues, as well as streets named after Confederate leaders such as Lee and Jackson. It seems to me that when these streets were being named, the use of prominent generals on both sides of the Union and the Confederate was designed as a means of bringing the North and the South together to heal the wounds that had divided our country so violently during the Civil War. But Susan, it now seems that liberals want to just rip the scab off those wounds and reopen the hatreds. Why the effort to erase the past? Always.
At a time when our country is probably more segregated than ever, with more and more ill will coming up between the races, and when we have events like Taking Back in Charlottesville, I think that since they're doing it on both sides, the North and the South, that we don't need to glorify war, that there are other ways that you could name the street. I could think of Sam Abbott Street, for instance, Abbott Avenue. I think there are some really great people who have existed
What do
in.
we really know about Sam Abbott?
He was a
Did he
communist.
sexually harass people?
He was a
I
communist.
mean, did he
And
beat
when
his wife?
I
I mean, what do we
ran-
really know
when
about
I-
Sam Abbott? I mean, this is nonsense.
We don't need to bring in.
We're trying to recreate history to
I'm not
satisfy
saying it's
ourselves.
recreating history, but what I'm saying, it doesn't glorify war or anything. It just name it after people locally who do things. There could be a Gilchrist Avenue or an Abbott Street, or there are plenty of people. It's the azalea capital of the world, so have Azalea Street. There are plenty of things that you
What's
do.
wrong with honoring our war leaders that led us through such
These-
a violent? You don't think the Civil War was a just war? Are you saying
I'm
that?
not saying that. I'm saying that let's just let bygones be bygones. We read it in our books, in our history books, and honor local people. I don't think there's anything wrong. And Takoma Park has always been, they are a nuclear-free zone, and I will tell you, they do not want the military war.
And let me ask you
parade in
a
Takoma
question,
Park
Susan.
either.
If a nuclear bomb lands in Washington, D.C., you think Takoma Park is going to be
They
excluded?
put their halo up,
Yeah,
and
okay.
it won't happen.
Evan, we are obviously in an era where we need some common sense. And why does it not get in the way of people trying to make these decisions?
Well, common sense and Takoma Park aren't two phrases I'd usually put in the same sentence, but just imagine living as comfortable and privileged of a life where you could waste your time being offended by an inanimate object. If a street sign is hurting your feelings and you need to waste your time taking that as your cause, the problem's not with the street sign. It's time
But
to
you
grow
know
up.
what? None of us live in Takoma Park. How dare we judge if they want to
I
do
wanted
that?
to make one comment
well,
about
first of all-
how this
Susan,
may have
Cynthia.
happened. You know, Maryland was not a firm union state. Maryland was a very conflicted state that happened to become a union state. And in Takoma Park, Takoma Park is, I think, a reflection of that, in that they had Union and Confederate general names on their streets. It's a reflection of, I think, Maryland's place during the Civil War as being kind of an ambivalent Union state.
But don't you think it's also that there was a recognition that there should be some healing between the two
I don't think so.
at the end of the
No,
war?
I don't think that's a reflection
that
of it
there
at
were
all.
there were good people on both sides
It sounds
that
good,
fought
but I
and
don't
died.
think so.
There were good people on both sides who fought and died, but the cause of the South and the Confederacy was wrong.
There may have been.
Period.
It may have been.
End of story.
Then why get rid of
I'm not
the
gonna
union
say
names?
period, end of story. The cause of the Confederacy, the idea of states' rights, was certainly not wrong, and the fact that we're talking
But
about
states' rights built on an economy
the right
fueled by
to govern
slavery.
the state, the right to govern
slaves. Don't
themselves, the right to
everything-
govern themselves. There's nothing wrong with that. In fact, Susan, even you who just said, "Well, who are we to judge Takoma Park?"
Who are you to
well,
judge
that
football?
you're talking about a smaller version of states' rights, local rights. But what is at work here is a lack of maturity. One of the things I loved about moving to this area was I could drive down the Jefferson Davis Highway or otherwise, and it was so cool that people of all stripes said, yeah, this is fine. We accept that. But now it's changed, and that's really what scares me.
And does it ever think that maybe it is a more enlightened view?
No,
That
not at all.
why offend people? Why bring up past
bad times. I don't.
Did you didn't live in the Confederacy or the Union?
lived
you
in
didn't hold
Minnesota.
slaves. You weren't a slave. It
I
doesn't matter.
lived in
if you
shouldn't be
Minnesota, where
offended.
more people
There is no
were
reason
killed.
for you to be offended. There's no reason for
Phil,
me
would
to
you
be
be
offended.
offended if you lived on a street named after a Confederate general?
Heck no, I'd probably like it.
Well, I mean,
I'd
obviously.
say let Takoma Park be Takoma Park. I certainly wouldn't.
Let
judge
football
it.
coaches be football coaches.
Exactly.
And yes,
Let parents be
And-
parents and decide if their kids are playing football
Let
or
Takoma
not.
Park figure it out, and I think it's going to come down to the cost
The
of
cost?
changing.
Of changing signs.
It will
Are
come
they
down
going
to
to
the cost of
are they going to
changing.
pay for the change of address for all the residents of Takoma Park? Give them new stationery? Is that what
No.
they're going?
No,
Is that
they
what they're
won't.
going to do?
they don't have the stationery
won't.
like that in Takoma Park. It's too traditional.
All right, stay tuned for parting shots when we come back from this short break. And welcome back. Now with parting shots, Susan Heltemes.
I made a mistake last week, and I want to clarify it. 91% of the administration's appointments to the judiciary are white people, and 77% are men. So if that doesn't get women and minorities riled up to want to vote for Democrats, I don't know what will. There are two things. Senator Ed Casemeyer from Baltimore announced yesterday that he is going to retire after this session. He is the chair of the Senate Budget Committee. I bet that there are some people in Montgomery County who are having some deep conversations with Senator Rich Madaleno this weekend, who is the vice chair of that committee and would go on to be that chair. He is running for governor, but maybe he'll switch back. The other big news is, which affects this show, is that Liz Mattori, who started out in 2014 as a Democrat running in District 18, for a delegate, moved on in 2016, first as an independent and then as a Republican, to run for Congress in the 6th District. And now she's announced she's moving to Baltimore and running as a Republican against Dutch Ruppersberger. All of that in a very short 4 years of time. I want to wish everyone a happy Valentine's Day, and go U.S. Olympians. Bring home the gold.
Thank you, Susan. Evan Young, your parting shot.
Yeah, so every year during the Super Bowl, the next class of the Hall of Fame is announced, and once again, terrible miscarriage of justice. Joe Jacoby, one of my college coaches, as well as one of the most dominant offensive linemen of the 80s and 90s, early 90s, helped lead the Redskins and the Hogs to multiple Super Bowls. A finalist again, was not inducted to the Pro Football Hall of Fame. I was a wide receiver, but I admit the offensive linemen don't get the credit they deserve. They're not the big name guys. They're not flashy. They don't have the numbers. But Joe Jacoby deserves more than anyone else to be in the Pro Football Hall of Fame.
Thank you, Evan. Phil Bell, your parting shot.
Well, coming from the rail industry, this week was very difficult. 2 employees of Amtrak, an engineer and a conductor, lost their lives in a horrific crash down in Casey, South Carolina. Our prayers go out to them and their families and all the others who were injured. It's very depressing. We love railroads, we love all that we do, but sometimes these things happen, and obviously we have to do all we can to make sure it doesn't again.
Cynthia Rubenstein, your parting shot.
I continue to be astounded by the field running for the at-large county council seat in the Democratic primary. There are now 28 or 29 people running for 4 seats. And it's going to become almost a full-time job to figure out which 4 to vote for on June 26th. On June 26th. But I'm going to do my very best.
Thank you, Cynthia. You know, there was a time when I was growing up when we were taught that we were supposed to embrace cultures from other languages and from other countries. And I was shocked the other day when there was an article about yoga pants and yoga and how it's been appropriated by white people. It just seems insane to me that we can't appreciate other people's culture and not be accused of doing something wrong instead of appreciating it. I want to thank the panel for being here tonight. I want to thank the audience for tuning in each and every week to Montgomery County's hardest hitting political talk show. For 21 this week, I'm Casey Aiken.